How is it possible for me to be myself when I'm always changing? My passions and interests are always changing. Is it possible to be consistent and authentic, or am I just destined to only do things for short periods of time? I feel like if I were to keep doing something, I would lose myself. Or would I find myself? It would require shutting off all the input streams I built for myself. The input streams that I created for myself to drive my creativity. Perhaps artists don't commit to doing the same thing. That's why they are artists and not accountants. Okay, so this one's an interesting one. Basically asking the question, can we be consistent while being ourselves? I'm sure every artist who wanted to succeed with their craft has felt a clash between the artist and the business, and how to manage that has been difficult for many people, including me. But I'll tell you a story. A couple days ago, I had this epiphany, quote unquote, that I should stop doing short form content because it was not very helpful for me. It did not help me feel fulfilled, and it felt like just a waste of time in comparison to YouTube and music, which felt like my true purposes that I should continue to pursue. And because of that, I was like, I need to stop getting distracted. I really need to hammer down on YouTube and music. And literally the day after, I felt really guilty about that decision. And I was like, maybe I should do short form content because look at what I'm missing out on. Look at this great audience that I could provide value to that I am not able to if I don't do short form content. And then the day after, I'm like, no short form content. We're just going to focus on videos. I can't get distracted. I can't live in fear. And I believe the day after that, I uploaded a YouTube short because I was so unsure about my situation. And I kept flip-flopping between, should I do short form content? Should I not? So I've had a lot of this overthinking, overanalyzing related to how do I be authentic versus how do I be smart with my business and how do I manage growth as an artist. And this clash is extremely hard clash because oftentimes what you want as an artist and what you want or what you think is right for you as a business will intersect. I do not know the right situation for you necessarily, the mix of artist and business, the plan that you specifically should know, but I think I can take down a little bit of the anxiety with a few of these pieces of information that I'm going to give that may help you put your walls down and find out the right strategy for you. So the first thing I want to recognize is option relativity. In this day and age, being yourself has become equivalent to getting fit or being happy, all of these different things. Like I could work out, right? And I'm looking at my body after working out like, man, I'm proud of how I look. I really like my body. And then I see someone with a more fit body than me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not jacked. I'm not fit. I could literally run a mile and be like, oh man, I'm so happy with my mile time. I'm so fast. And then I see someone else run a faster mile time and I'm like, man, I'm not fast at all. They're fast. Being yourself has become the equivalent to that. Like you can look and be like, okay, I'm chasing this thing. I'm really being myself. And then you see someone else that you perceive as quote unquote authentic and like, oh, they're being themselves. I'm not being myself. And it's become this comparison game that has distracted us from what it truly means to be ourselves, which is something that I don't even know if we can truly reach. The point I'm trying to make with this is we're constantly comparing ourselves with other people, even in the terms of how much we are ourselves in comparison to how much other people are ourselves. We still use this metric as a way to play into this overall comparison game that we're in. To add on to this point, I think back to the story I told about how I'm struggling with choosing short form or YouTube. What if short form never existed? I would have never had this issue. Short form is only creating this clash for me because I'm seeing this business opportunity that can maybe provide me more listeners that's happening. But if I never even knew short form existed, I wouldn't have this clash of authenticity. What if YouTube never existed? Would I think I'm inauthentic because I wasn't pursuing YouTube videos? No, I wouldn't even know what a YouTube video is. Therefore, I may not even think that I'm not being myself because I'm not doing YouTube videos. So what if we never knew about these options that are in our mind that can help us quote unquote be ourselves more? Would we feel like we're more ourselves or less ourselves because we don't know of a better option to be ourselves? So the awareness that we have in these situations can distract us from what it truly means to be ourselves, and not even distract us, but severely impact whether we feel like we're being ourselves or not. Just because you don't know something exists, that doesn't affect how you're truly being yourself. But when you have the awareness in your mind, you may actually change the way you think about how much you are being yourself because you know shorts exist, you know this thing exists and you're not doing it, or you don't know the thing exists at all. So now that we know that the options that we have and the options that we compare ourselves to can severely impact how we feel about how authentic we are, we can maybe be less hard on ourselves with, oh, I'm not being authentic enough, or oh, I'm not being myself, or I'm not being myself, quote unquote, enough. And I think that's that's important to do, especially in the artistic game, when we get caught up in looking at everyone else's numbers and looking at all these inspirations that we look up to and be like, man, I wish I could be like them. The second piece of perspective I want to give to this is the idea that time will tell. See, I've had countless discussions with myself. I talk to myself a lot for no reason, probably wasted time with these discussions being like, oh, am I authentic enough? Oh, am I this enough? Who am I? What do I actually represent? And to be honest, I've never been able to answer the question of what I represent through a discussion. I can never have a discussion with myself and be like, oh, I represent this at the end of the day. And I stand by this, and this. The truth is, I figured out what I represented by just doing a lot of things and looking back and seeing what stayed the same and what didn't stay the same. I've been doing this since 2017 around, posting videos. And now I'm looking at all these videos. I'm like, what did I consistently talk about? And what consistently made me feel something? And that was motivation and music. I took all this data of me creating, trying new things, and eventually came down to the conclusion that, okay, I changed the content I did, I changed the way I did it, I changed this, and this. I used to do X thing, but I didn't do that. But one thing that has stayed the same through all these years since 2017 is I talked about motivation and I talked about music, and my music has motivational themes in it, which is just something that happened. And then I'm like, oh, wow, maybe I do represent a motivational, inspirational storytelling music space, which I never really thought I did have. But if I sat there in 2017 and tried to figure out what I was about, when I didn't even put any content out, I would not have an accurate depiction of who I am. What I'm trying to say with this is, how can you be yourself while being consistent? Maybe just try a lot of things and be okay with not being yourself until you see what sticks for you. And then through that, you can figure out what's truly yourself. Being yourself doesn't always mean that you have to completely be yourself. I think that's that whole rat race of who can be the most authentic distracts us from being ourselves, ironically. Being yourself means that there's some things that stick, some things that don't, but I'm going to try a mix of both. And I think that one other thing we need to remember with being ourselves is it's okay to be someone who is searching. You know, we always think, okay, the person who is themselves is the one who's confident, who's found themselves, and they're in their own space, they're unapologetic, love it or hate it, this is the way I am. And to be honest, I could act like I'm confident, this is the way I am, and there's states where I feel that way, but to be honest, the person who's truly me at this point in time is someone who's still searching, and someone who's still unconfident, someone who's still unsure of who they are or where they're going to end up. And maybe that's being more than themselves. It's just not the glorified, confident version that is usually associated with being yourself. So often we're associating someone who is found as someone who is themselves. But what if you're just someone who's truly searching? And you don't want to put a mask up that you're someone who's found. You're still trying to find the right answers, the right path for you, and you're truly unsure. An example of this in my music career is I recently released a song called Lost Souls, where I talk about my struggle with religion and trying to find a conclusion. Me being someone who's still searching for something that fulfills me and tired of being judged for being X way or Y way for another reason that I can't control, or just a reason that I don't feel like I should be judged for.
If I grew up different than you must know better for me, but I don't know better, so I won't hold that against you. At least I admit I'm lost, and life a constant journey of learning.
The whole song is about me being like, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm going. I'm a lost soul, and I just want to be okay with being lost. Not saying that I don't want to eventually find a closer answer to the questions that I'm seeking, but I'm lost. And surprisingly, the reaction that I got from a song like that was one of the most authentic reactions. I'm not saying a conclusion. I'm not necessarily saying, yes, I'm so confident. What showed in that song was super insecure. I was unsure of everything. But surprisingly, that authenticity of being someone who was unsure about who they were spoke to people and was a way of being myself. Someone who was not sure about how they were being themselves expressed that, and ironically in that way was themselves, and because of that was able to speak to other people. See, the main conflict in this comment was, how can I be authentic while being consistent? And how can I change what I'm doing and be okay with changing while being consistent to something? Is it possible to do both? And I've always been obsessed about how can I make the best decisions for my career, because I really want to succeed. And because of that, I'd constantly change my strategy to see the one that works the best, because I was so open-minded and desperate in a way to reach the best outcomes. I was willing to put in the work to do whatever. And now I have this thing that's teaching me a little bit more patience, which is making it so I set a certain amount of days, for example, like 12 days, where I have to do one specific strategy or do one specific thing. After that period of days, I have time to reflect and change my strategy. Because of this, I give myself the time to not only change the strategies I'm doing, which is something you will always need to do in any field because you will naturally change and you need to be open to changing your strategy, which you already want to do at eventual points in time. But at the same time, it holds me accountable to the strategies that I create and forces me to live true to these strategies. For example, I have to post a video every single day until June 12th. That's the goal that I've set, and I have to go with this strategy until then with blind confidence in what I'm doing. After June 12th, I can change my decisions, but until then, I have to go through with this strategy of daily videos just to see how it plays out. So by giving yourself room to implement and room to reflect, you're allowing yourself to not only change, but also stay true to consistency and giving both room. Now, how many days should you implement for following your passion and following your strategy versus changing what you're doing? That is completely up to you, but I think the main point is choosing and giving a space to change and giving a space to implement and making sure those spaces are both honored, because as a creative, you're going to be balancing between brainstorming and creating, and I think just respecting and creating space for both parts will allow you to be consistent while being authentic. I hope this video helped you understand a little bit more about the anxieties that you may experience surrounding business and art and how to stay consistent while being yourself, and maybe gave you more direction on how you're specifically going to do it.